Good morning, everyone. Pam Jacobson, your host of Three Things You Need to Know. Welcome. If you're just joining for the first time, we are in week 4 of our 2021 Rejuvenate, Reset, and Regenerate. Rejuvenate, Regenerate, Reset. That is the topic of discussion that's going to happen over the next several weeks, looking at how we can have the best health ever in 2021. For those of you who are new to the program, program's been up and running for a while. Take a look back at some of the previous videos last year in 2020. I gave pretty much a soup to nuts overview and really, I think, an in-depth discussion about the work involved in health optimization. And in 2021, I've turned my sights to a more specific conversation about what we can do to help our bodies rejuvenate and reset themselves, which looks like it's going to be critically important in 2021, as it is proving already only in the third week of January to be a pretty challenging year for most of us. And we are still very much in the midst of a significant pandemic. So really working to optimize your health is going to be, I think, probably one of the most important things you could do in the coming several months. So having said that, in week 1, I introduced the idea of detoxification, talked a little bit about why we should do it, what it means. In week 2, I went into a little bit more detail about how myself and Dr. Grace Soltinsky, who is my partner in the Healing Sanctuary, could help you all figure out the best approach, right? There's no one size fits all way to rejuvenate and reset and detoxify. And we are offering, free, brief consultations telephonically or via Zoom to help you figure out, do you need to have a curated supplement-based program, special diet, or is this something, for many of you who've been following and doing all these things all along, perhaps it's really now just specifically focusing in on the key things that you can do, the choices that you make on a daily basis that can assist your detoxification process. Last week, I interviewed Dr. Grace. Many of you may not be aware that Dr. Grace and her husband, Mark Soltinsky, own a water store in Dana Point called Eco Waterhouse. And they provide filtration systems all over the world. But they provide water that you can actually go buy and fill into your own containers or buy from them. Probably the best curated water you can possibly get, right? That takes all the bad stuff out, puts the good stuff back. And I interviewed Grace last week talking about one of the most important things that you can do for repair and rejuvenation and detoxification of the body. And that is to be not only well hydrated, but well hydrated with the best, healthiest possible kind of water that you can get. And the ensuing weeks now are going to be each week a discussion about the thing that week that you should begin implementing that can help you in this quest that we have to have the best health ever by the end of 2021. And for those of you who have not experienced COVID, let this be the year that you are not directly impacted by that virus. For those of you that are deciding that you will do the vaccine, let this be the year that you get your vaccine and that you have a good experience with that and that your health is such that you're not one of the people who may go on to have some issues with the vaccine. So having said that, let's get started. So the title of today was how to clean the brain, how to have the best brain health, how do you detoxify the brain? And there's a really great article in Science Direct. I have put the link in the chat area here. I've also put the contact information for the Healing Sanctuary for those of you who do want to set up that consultation. But what we're going to talk about today really is one of the most important things that you can do to detoxify your brain is sleep. So I'm already feeling the eye rolling because those of you who've watched this program have heard me talk extensively and incessantly about sleep because it is, in my world, the number one most important thing that we can do for all health, all body function. But what we don't know, or what maybe you weren't aware of, is that it is really the only time potentially that the brain can actually detoxify itself. Because in the study, I posted a link to the Science Direct article. Although the article does admit that there's a lot more research that needs to happen, it gives you a really good explanation of the brain's detoxification system called the glymphatic system. And essentially, it's similar to the lymph system in the rest of the body, which is a major part of our detoxification mechanism. But in the brain, it's mainly managed with cerebrospinal fluid and the flushing of cerebrospinal fluid through that system. But what we found is that it appears that that only really happens during certain deep wave levels of sleep and certain types of anesthetics that are given during medical procedures. Um, so it's pretty specific. And in the past, I've given you broad and general information about sleep. But today I want to tell you specifically, it's not necessarily just about the numbers of hours of sleep. In fact, the article really doesn't discuss that. It talks about the deeper levels of sleep, right? Your REM sleep and your deeper wave sleep is where the glymphatic system actually is able to function or to be activated, if you will. So I wanted to talk a little bit about those deeper waves of sleep. And it's really essentially the things that you do during your day, like your diet and your hydration and your stress response management and your exercise, will impact how well or how many times you dip into those deeper levels of sleep at night. So what many of us, don't really recognize is that it's not just about going to bed and planning to be in bed for 8 hours. It's really about the quality of sleep. You can be in bed for 8 hours, but if the quality of the sleep is not there, then chances are that all of the repair and rejuvenation activities that take place during the night, most of them do take place during the REM and deeper levels of sleep. And if you're not getting into those levels, or you're not getting in and staying in those levels frequently or often enough, then you're not going to be affecting the level of repair that's needed. So there's a really great book that I would recommend. I've recommended it before. I did put the information here in the chat box. Matthew Walker is a sleep researcher out of Berkeley, and he wrote a book called Why We Sleep. I think it's an excellent primer for us, lay people when it comes to sleep research and sleep science. And he gives some really good how-to ideas in there about how to increase and prepare for the best quality of sleep, not just length of sleep. And it does start with having, enough time in bed, because the reality is that even though you might plan to be in bed for 8 hours, the amount of sleep that you actually get is less than that, probably, by maybe even as much as 30 to 60 minutes. And then some portion of that, maybe anywhere from 30 to 50% of that, would be these deeper levels of sleep. And since we're not all going to rush out and get a sleep study at Matthew's organization there in Berkeley, I do think that there's ways that you can understand. And I do really think tracking and measuring is helpful. I know it's been very helpful for me. I use a device called the Whoop strap. There's other things, the newer versions of Apple Watch, the Aura Ring, that are wearables. I think it does have to be something on your person. I'm not sure that a phone app that's just on your phone next to your bed has the ability to really understand and trend whether or not you're getting into those deeper levels of sleep. But a wearable device certainly can help with that. And I think it can begin to help you correlate what you're doing that may be impacting positively or negatively those deeper levels of sleep. For instance, alcohol and how close to bedtime, how much stress you had during the day, and whether or not you did anything about that. Did you meditate? Did you deep breathe? Whether or not you moved your body. And here's an interesting thing. For me, I see my deeper levels of sleep impacted when I overtrain. So if I have a very a significant amount of exercise, maybe too late into the evening, and so I'm not fully recovered by the time I'm up the next morning, it impacts things like my heart rate variability and my levels of sleep. So these are things, and I do think it's very individualized. I think that's why we don't see so much information out there that says this is exactly the way you have to do it. I think each of us really have to kind of fine tune. I think there's some basic ideas. Yes, you have to be in bed long enough. You do have to prepare for sleep, giving yourself that 30-minute wind down that I've talked about in my sleep videos, sleep hygiene, if you will, making room for relaxation before bed so the nervous system can naturally disengage and allow for sleep. I think you can use some things like melatonin and magnesium at bedtime that can help calm the muscular system down and help you more easily get and stay in those deeper levels of sleep. But certainly, all of those decisions that you make during the day have an impact. And I think when you use a tracking device, you're able to, from one day to the next, see the kinds of things that may be having an impact. So I strongly recommend, if you're really serious about rejuvenating and repairing and resetting yourself in this new year, and I hope you are, because I think it's going to prove to be a really challenging year for the world in terms of our health, both by the fact that the virus not only is still here, but appears to be mutating and worsening and potentially now becoming potentially outside of the realm of the possibility of a vaccine helping it. And then I think we have the vaccine. And I think we're seeing, certainly you would expect that the vaccine is going to trigger an immune response. That's the whole point, right? We want the immune system to create antibodies against the virus. But I think the experiences of each individual with that are going to be different depending on the status of their immune system at the time of administration, and certainly the compounded effect of having multiple, vaccines as you do with a couple of the manufacturers. So again, that my point is that all of us really need to kind of stand up and take notice and understand that it's your responsibility to create that optimal health environment so that you can be in the best place to deal with whatever comes your way, whether it's the virus itself, some other mutation of it, or potentially the vaccine. So having said that, to sum up for today, we're talking about the brain and the importance of flushing the brain, detoxifying, and that this happens. And if you look at the research that we do have, this appears to happen only during sleep and certain types of anesthetic administration. So you need to have sleep at the very least for your brain health. Dr. Dan Amen, who's a big brain researcher and has brain clinics all over the country, is another big proponent of sleep for brain detoxification. I put his name here in the chat box if you want to go on and Google and and do a little research yourself there. But again, in summary, allow yourself some wind down to bed, about 30 minutes off your electronics, no TV, nothing stimulating, should be quiet time, warm shower, bath, deep breathing, good time to meditate, good time to journal. Make sure your room is cool enough, quiet and dark. This is important for allowing you to get into those deeper levels of sleep. If you have anything that creates disturbance during the night, like noise or light outside the window, those can absolutely impact your ability to get into the deeper levels of sleep. Use melatonin if you're someone who has difficulty falling asleep. Use L-theanine if you're someone who has difficulty with overactive mind at night. You can't settle the mind down. L-theanine can be a really helpful supplement for that. Magnesium for those of us that have aggravated body pain or restless legs or restless body. Magnesium can be very helpful, and it's a very common mineral that the majority of us can be deficient in. And allow enough time. Most of us don't give our bodies enough time in bed. You need more time than you think, right? Because just because you were in bed 8 hours does not mean that you've got 8 hours. And the question is, how long did it take you to get in those deeper levels, and were you able to stay there? So I hope you found this helpful. So number one thing you can do is hydrate and drink good water. So we talked about that last week. Number two really is the idea of adequate sleep. And there is a lot of information out there. You can look back at the sleep researcher I interviewed earlier this past year and read Dr. Walker's book, Why We Sleep. I think those things will really help. And I think if those two things alone, if you were just hydrating and sleeping, you would be miles closer to your health optimization goals. But next week, I'm going to talk about maybe more mental, emotional, spiritual detoxification, which you make sure you tune in, because on February 10th, the week after that, I am going to actually interview somebody really exciting. So I'll give you that news as we go along. But for now, please contact Grace or I at the information here in the chat box so we can help you figure out what's the best approach for you to rejuvenate and reset in 2021. And please tune Dr. Walker's book, take a look at the Science Director article. And as always, reach out. Let me know if you've got any questions. If there's anything that you really want to know more about, I'm happy to get your feedback, and certainly will incorporate that into the show going forward. So have a great week, everyone. And I'll see you same time, 9 a.m. Pacific, here every Wednesday morning. Take care.